Hello, and welcome to our program. This is Heather Grant, the poet. My name is Chris Kosky, and I'm the bassist. And together we are Turn of Phrase, a conversation between a poet and a bassist. Before we begin, we'd like to thank the very talented folks that you will not see in front of the camera today. Our director and video editor, Kyle Schrotel, audio engineer, Mark Hanna, our camera operators, David Curry and Diana Meredith. Thanks to Ben Sullivan for the lighting, and last but certainly not least, our associate producer, Ralph Sordell. Heather and I would also like to thank our hosts today, Diana Meredith and Ralph Sordell, and this, their Broken Circle, which is an ideal setting for Heather's works because so much of her poetry is inspired by and about nature.
So nature has been my teacher since I was very young, and I go to her for comfort, wisdom, inspiration. These poems are my experiences in nature and with the natural world. We begin today with poems of Phoenix and Honolulu. The desert of the Southwest is an extraordinary place of natural adaptation, landscapes, sky paintings. Before crossing, from the top of North Mountain, the sun drops below the horizon. A crescent moon rises above the city's glow as we sit in an outcropping with mesquite and barrel cactus. Before sliding our bodies flat across metamorphic rock, close our eyes. The wind billows over and around us, rhythmic as an incoming tide, washes over the rocks, our ancient bodies, before crossing inland seas. Changing tides. Birds draw a line, lift, rise higher, slide down a wind slope, crossing an entire canyon, coast to a low ledge before landing. The pattern's never the same. The wind shifts, rolls in the opposite direction. Birds glide up and down the canyon walls, riding the changing tide. Something in me flies up to a hawk, hovering high in the wind, rises toward the sun, down over the cottonwoods, and out through the canyons. Hawaii, the land of aloha, of tropical flowers, of trade winds, and rainbows. Rainy season. The rain starts tinny on the roof, drips from banana and tea leaves, drenches papayas and mangoes, pelts percussively into red dirt down to the first layers of roots, then lets up. For a moment, the sky brightens. Curtains of rain fall for hours, day after day after day. The rain seeps down through sedimentary metamorphic layers. Rivulets turn to streams and rivers underground, filling giant lakes, overflowing. Hawaiian Blessings. Nudged awake at 3 a.m., I stumble barefoot to thick, wet grass. The eastern sky, a dark purple tapa. Misty rain falls on the monkey pods, now dark contours in the neighbor's yard. While a swollen August moon hangs low in a bright western sky, spotlighting the trees. A faint line begins to draw up through the dense, rounded foliage, curves high above trees over a bank of white clouds, then, leading to the horizon, fans to a palette of 7. Up through the same dark green, another line draws an arc high above the first. Colors slowly fade in. Night rainbows.
Thank you again for being here with us, or tuning in, as it were. I'd like to just take a minute and tell you a little bit about Heather and about me. Heather told me that she has always been drawn to poetry. She began writing verse at age 11, and she has given poetry readings in Honolulu and Phoenix and here in the DC metro area. She self-published 3 chapbooks, and she has been published in numerous journals and anthologies. Kind of like Heather, my entree into my future was also at age 11. That's when I started playing this, the double bass. I also play electric bass, and one of the things that I love about bass is that it's present in so many different styles of music, in ensembles of every size and stripe. So I've had the good fortune of being able to play a lot of different styles of music, which I love, because I love listening to all kinds of music. I met Heather when I was playing a jam session with her very talented jazz drummer husband, Webb Grant. And I was talking to Heather on the break, and she tells me she's a poet, and I got my ears perked up, and I said, oh, would you be interested in collaborating? And fortunately for me, she was very receptive.
It took me a couple of years, but when we did it the first time, it was really, we were just kind of stunned about what happened, that there was an instant communication between us, between the words and the music. And even though we've been doing these poems together, it changes every time. It's really an improv. Chris has some ideas, but then I'll be listening to her and I'll change the way that I read the poems. So it's really a conversation. And it's every time we do it, it's amazing how fresh it is. And it's fun. We have a blast.
Turns out Heather's a jazzer at heart.
This next section of poems follows the seasons, beginning in summer and returning to summer. The unseen world is all around us. Horse bones. Bleached horse bones wash up on the beach, bones from broken down bodies, the Arabian beauties that never made it across the Atlantic to the New World. Long leg bones unsplintered, smaller bones scattered along the shore. A man squints, and hundreds of ghosts canter above the waves, then splash in the shallows onto the beach. With fire in his eyes, the tall, dark horse lowers its head, moist breath on the man's ear, nudges him to grab hold of the bristly mane, pull himself up and over onto high haunches, settle into the hollow of its back. Horse and rider climb through the surf onto firm wet ground. The man strokes the long, silky neck, leans forward, listens to the whinnies from farther down the beach. His knees into the horse's belly, they canter along the coastline into morning light. As a child, I was always excited when the full moon shone through my window and woke me. I still am. Conversation with the moon. You often wake me when full, shining through unshuttered windows, insistent. I finally rise, grateful. This morning you woke me at 4 a.m. and wanting to ignore your invitation, pulled the covers tight. When my husband, coffee in hand, whispered through the door, a lunar eclipse. Floating mid-heaven, your silver body glows, her shadow, a blue halo, moves slowly across your radiance. Your waxing lunar phases travel in fast, slow motion within the hour. By dawn, a tangerine globe shimmering, whisper, "This is why I woke you." This poem is a true story for my dear friend Ellen. Walnut Harvest. The summer hammock was strung inside the barn to draw walnuts falling like black gold. Handful by handful, she tossed in walnuts until the hammock sagged to the cement floor. Black walnuts were her quick cash from the farmer's market for walnut spread and walnut bread, and walnut cakes. There are some who prefer it simple, walnut meat in the half shell, which she discovered early one morning as she slid the heavy barn door open to a sprung hammock. A line of broken shells trailed to a knothole, another nod into the canvas, a perfect shoot, walnut chasing walnut to the dusty floor. From the kitchen window, she looks out to the yard and watches the fat gray squirrels high up in the empty walnut trees. Although winter can be a dark time, we often find moments of light in the darkness. February. Afternoon quiet, sky gray, snow falling, confetti. Sudden commotion. Robins coming from all directions gather for a moment above the tip-top of a pine tree, descend all at once, like pulling a gown over the head of a girl. The tree fills with birds pressing against each other, brown wings pull tight as they turn from side to side, bare red breasts glistening under wet snow. The pine dances in a cold wind. Robins spiral off, the tree now bare but for cone ornaments dangling on branches. All afternoon robins fly back and forth, dressing and undressing the pine tree. After snow, a scattering of tiny footprints on windswept snow. A mourning dove lands on the crusty ridge, waddles to the smear of earth flow from the planters. Her feet pump the earth, wings drawn tight to the wind, and closes her eyes, soaking in the chilly afternoon sun. Winter in Rock Creek Park. On sunless winter days, beech trees light up brown hillsides with creamy satin leaves, shimmer early evening in the dark, quiet forest, until green hums in the wind and the leaves let go, fluttering, light. Nature often confirms our insights. Out of the fog. After heavy late winter snows, warm winds blow up from the south, lifting white clouds from snowbanks piled high along walkways, parking lots, streets. Fog so thick it seems the sky has lowered, and we are lifted into it, quieted, expectant, as a sheet of paper or blank canvas. We sit on the veranda with earth-filled pots, fog on the other side of the railing. I haltingly say, I am on the edge of new words. And at once a flock of small dark birds appears out of the fog, flying straight toward us, black marks against all that whiteness, swings up and over the roof, and then gone. This poem is dedicated to my departed and dear friend, Tree Kale, who sat with us on the hill that night in early spring. A fire in green, a blast of early heat, and the winter trees burst into leaf, glowing chartreuse. At the edge of the woods, we sat reverent before a gigantic oak, green leaves flickering. A luminescent aura floats beyond branches into open air, lights up a dark purple sky, brighter than a full moon rising above the meadow. The next day, the sky is yellow-green, Green smoke flows over the land, draping trees diaphanous green. The air swells. Green ash settles. I brush green dust off the porch table and chairs before sitting down. My fingers tingle and burn. Soon the trees will draw fires inside, green darken, desire twisting, turning, reaching for the sun. Milking the lavender. Hidden among summer verdure, the elegant lander, frame still intact, silver branches, leaves cascading over the pot, releases such sweet scent as I strip crinkled leaves from stems, rub them between fingers, both hands in the pot as far down as the roots, mixing roots and stems and leaves until the earth is saturated. Gather handfuls in my palms, breathe lavender air, rub it on my face, hands, arm, hair, until washed up in lavender, innocent as a sleep-covered child. When my family and I walked in the Sequoia National Forest that late afternoon, I felt we were entering sacred ground. Among sequoias, we walk respectfully in a pantheon of giant, magnanimous trees. Their vigor runs up hundreds of feet straight into sky. Sequoias present to our history live for thousands of years, then simply fall. I rest my hands on dark red bark, feet thick, dense, layered like skin. Press ear to trunk, listen for the pulse, then lean full body, arms extended. My feet resting on pine needles and silky red silt. A wellspring flows up and down my body as the sun falls, skirting the forest floor. In the past 5 years, devastating forest fires have scorched the West. California burning. Summer lightning thrust into parched earth, dried grasses in the forest, tinder for a braise. The first tree catches, fire running up the trunk along the ground to the next pine, and the next from crown to crown. The wind drives hard along the mountain ridges, sparks shower from a crimson sky. Hillsides disappear in the blaze. Down the mountain slopes, rivers race, blood red, blood orange. Tree skeletons shake. Towers of black smoke lift above the slopes. In the hellish blaze, the screams of frantic animals are not heard. Birds fly out of the searing wind. Days later, ghostly trees stand with pared off limbs, mountain slopes covered in thick ash. And eerie silence drifts in neighborhoods still smoldering. I hear earth calling, sister, sister.